If you're looking for a Samsung phone, one that will last longer than anything else in the segment, a jack of all trades, then look no further. The Galaxy M30S, that's it. For everything else, there are other options. So there is the Galaxy M30S review, the short version. Now if you want to know more, go ahead, watch on. Hey guys, Ash here from C4E Tech, and if you do end up liking what you see here, please subscribe to C4E Tech and turn on notifications by hitting that bell icon. Let's now get this video started. Now while the battery life is the most impressive feature on this phone, it doesn't mean the rest isn't worth talking about. In fact, I was quite impressed with how light the M30S is. Now despite that 6000 mAh battery, this phone weighs in at just 188 grams, and thanks to the curved edges and the even weight distribution, the M30S feels good in hand. It doesn't feel like a bulky phone. That said, if you squeeze the phone along the edges, especially near the middle, there is a bit of creaking. I suspect Samsung has used really thin plastic here to keep the weight down. Now, moving on to the looks, well, the gradient pattern, it does look good, as this is plastic though. The back is prone to picking up scratches, smudges. Now, this isn't uncommon in this segment because most phones, they do come with plastic backs, right? But Samsung happens to be one of the very few brands that doesn't happen to include a case in the box. So if you buy a M30S, make sure you order a case along with it to help keep your M30S free of scratches and smudges. Now turning the phone around, let's talk about this display. Now this is an area where the M30S absolutely shines. We have a gorgeous 6.4-inch panel here. This is a Full HD Plus AMOLED display. The Infinity U from Samsung has amazing contrast, really vivid colors, and of course there is White Wine L1 certification. The only complaint that I have with this display is that it probably doesn't get bright enough. Now at times it can be a tad difficult to operate under bright sunlight. Not always, most of the times it's fine, and I don't think I'm going to be able to show you this on camera since it's been pretty overcast here in Chennai. It's been raining all the while. That said, for other things like binge watching Netflix, scrolling through Facebook, or enjoying any other forms of media, the display makes for an immersive experience. Overall, despite the brightness not being the best, I still feel this is one of the best displays in this price range. Samsung has made no mention though of what glass they've used for protection here, so that is something worth keeping in mind. Now moving on to what's under the hood, we have the new Exynos 9611 chip here. This is a pretty nice upgrade from the Exynos 7904 that we had with the M30, and you can easily spot the difference even with day-to-day use. We no longer have that stutter while switching to the multitasking menu, and for the most part One UI 1.5 performs smoothly here. And for the most part, I said for the most part since there are occasional instances of little lags or micro stutters, but they are few and far between enough that they didn't really bother us much. The 464GB review unit that we tested managed to keep all our apps in memory most of the times, so no problems with that. There is also a higher end 6128 variant if you want the extra RAM or more likely the extra storage. Of course, there is a dedicated microSD slot here for added expandability, so you could always go with the 64GB variant and add a microSD card if you want to expand storage. As far as gaming goes, the Mali G72 MP3 GPU here is again a step up from the Mali G71 MP2 on the M30. Samsung has also thrown in a dedicated gaming mode. They're calling it Game Boost, and it seems to help optimize the memory for better performance with games while also keeping watch on battery life and temperatures at the same time. The hardware here is capable of handling graphically intensive titles like PUBG and even Call of Duty Mobile. There is a bit of compromise with regards to graphics or frame rates at times, and the back tends to get a little warm after very long gaming sessions. So while the M30S is capable of handling games, even some intensive titles, I still wouldn't recommend it if gaming is gonna be your main focus. Now I'm pretty sure none of you want me to go on and on about One UI, you've heard it all before. So I'm gonna keep this short. It's based on Android 9 Pie with a promised upgrade to Android 10 somewhere in the pipeline. All the regular Samsung features are here and accounted for. On top of that, we have an always on display, very useful since there is no LED notification light here, and we also get a dedicated night mode. Moving straight into what is probably the star of the show, the battery. The M30S is a phone that just refuses to die. Even with very intense use, it lasted us well into day 2. And with moderate usage, I'm sure you could even get to day 3. Now, take this example. My colleague who did most of the testing for this device was able to watch about 2.5 hours of 1080p Twitch streams with less than 15% juice left. Well, we have the 6000 mAh unit plus Samsung's optimizations to thank for this amazing battery life. The M30 already had stellar battery life. The M30S probably, it's up that to a different level. It's probably offering the best battery life in this segment. It's best in class. As far as charging goes, Samsung has included a 15-watt fast charger in the box, so all bases have been covered. Now before we round this one up with the optics, let's take a quick peek at the sunrays. The rear-mounted fingerprint scanner, it's still not the fastest out there, but it does get the job done. The same can be said about face unlock too. Like with the M30, Samsung is using the selfie camera as an auto brightness sensor. It works fine for the most time but has a hard time adjusting to abrupt changes in light sources. The bottom firing speaker is loud enough and there is Dolby Atmos support with the 3.5mm headphone jack, so that sounds quite nice. As far as call quality goes, the M30S sounded excellent. The earpiece output was crisp and clear and no one at the other end complained either. I faced no drops. So finally, let's talk optics. This is probably one of the biggest upgrades here. Gone is the 13 megapixel sensor from the M30 and instead we have a 48 megapixel primary sensor with an f2 aperture lens. The resulting pictures, they look good, and like I said earlier, it is pretty overcast here in Chennai right now, but you can still see the dynamic range excel. The camera has managed to bring out quite a bit of detail from the shadows. The colors, in typical Samsung fashion, are a bit saturated. Personally, I tend to like that. We also have a 48 megapixel mode in here, but it doesn't seem to make a great deal of difference. Now coming to low light, this camera does fairly well even with just the auto mode. Switching on to the dedicated night mode, it makes a pretty big difference as the resulting pictures are a lot more brighter and have significantly more detail. However, the dynamic range does take a hit here, as you can see here in the leaves of this plant, and there is an obvious crop in as well. This is probably done by Samsung to compensate for the lack of OIS, since with the night mode, the camera is taking multiple shots at varying exposures and combining them, so there is bound to be some shake and the crop helps match these shots. Now the wide angle camera in here is an 8 megapixel f2.2 and under good lighting conditions it takes crisp looking shots with punchy colors. And this is also an upgrade from the ultra-wide sensors we've seen before with the M series. The dynamic range has been improved. The rear portraits, they've turned out quite crisp. Samsung has included live focus capabilities in here, which means we can manually adjust the blur levels on portraits. The edge reduction is good, not perfect though, as you can see in the area around its ears. The colors look natural. When it comes to video recording, we can capture up to 4K at 30 FPS from the primary sensor. It's got good detail, great dynamic range. The only thing missing is stabilization. It is present, but for that we need to go down to 1080p 30. Here EIS kicks in and the resulting footage is a lot more stable. It's still crisp, the colors are still punchy. Samsung have included their flagship SuperSteady option too here. And as you can see, once we turn that on, it's able to eliminate virtually every bit of shake from the scene. There is a little bit of the jelly effect to the edges of the video, especially noticeable while panning around, and the detail levels, they are noticeably worse than 1080p stabilized footage, but it is still a nice feature to have. And speaking of nice to haves, the ultra-wide camera can also capture video, but that is limited to a max resolution of 1080p 30. Quite understandable since it's an 8 megapixel sensor. Now onto the selfie side of things, the 16 megapixel snapper on the M30S takes some really good looking shots. Zooming in, we can see a lot of detail on the face. The background too is nicely exposed and the colors look natural. When it comes to portrait mode, its reduction isn't all that great, but for casual social media sharing, it should work just fine. So for 13,999, is the M30S worth purchasing? Well, if you want a reasonably good offering, a jack of all trades, so to speak, from a tier 1 brand like Samsung, or if you want the best battery life possible in this category with a pretty good AMOLED panel, then the Galaxy M30S is going to be the phone for you. If not, then we do have more competitive options from the likes of Redmi and Realme in this segment. While not the highest spec phone in the segment, the M30S, especially by Samsung standards, seems to be a very serious offering. So if you've been holding out on getting a 14,000-15,000 rupee Samsung phone, then don't wait anymore. This is it. The M30S is a pretty solid all-rounder, and especially compared to something like the A50s, it is the better Samsung option. So that's my final verdict on the Samsung M30 refresh. Now I want to know what you guys think. What would you consider buying in this segment? Would you go for an M30S or would you go for something else? Let me know in the comments below. And with that, we get to the end of this video. Thumbs up, thumbs down based on whatever you felt about it. Subscribe, turn on notifications by hitting that bell icon if you haven't yet. Thanks a lot for watching. Till next time, my name's Ash. You've been watching C4E Tech, and I'm signing off for now. You guys have a great day. Bye-bye.